When meditating, you generally focus your consciousness on something. It could be a candle flame, your breathing, your musculature, and you try to let your thoughts, which are not all verbal, but generally people think of them that way, float away, or you don't grasp them. I think of having them float away as if they were balloons, but not completely filled with helium, but partially with air, so they just sort of slowly leave your consciousness, because that seems more consistent with the whole notion of meditation. And it's a hard thing to do, not getting the thoughts to crowd your consciousness, but with practice you get better and better at it. And over time you kind of begin to become successful. And when you are, you also get to that point inevitably where you go, holy shit, I didn't, and then you let that float away. And once you get good at that skill, then you can practice other versions of meditation. I suppose being somewhat creative, I started to meditate while walking around a lake with lots of foliage. I suppose that's not that creative, but then that led to the part where I'm really thinking of, and that is, I recall being in a supermarket line that wasn't moving with a crying baby right next to me and a bunch of people yelling about a price in the next aisle and lots of commotion and all, and I started to meditate. And it's really quite phenomenal, because with practice, and I'm way out of practice now, this is years ago, you can sort of like change your consciousness and you get into a relaxed state, and all of that noise that's outside of you doesn't cling to you, and it changes the way you feel, and it changes the way you respond. You actually don't respond, and you sort of just observe it without commentary. So the reason I'm bringing that up is that I thought of this idea of letting go while meditating to thoughts and all, and I thought of applying it to different practices. And I've done this before, but this morning when I went to McDonald's to read the Sunday paper and then have a discussion with my friend Bill and some of the other guys that are hanging out at the McDonald's, I decided to do this practice again. And the way it works is, you read the paper, and normally when you read the paper you get all these thoughts that come into mind, but not just thoughts, emotions. And I know lots of folks don't read the paper anymore, because I get that a lot, like, what do you do that for? And I know some folks get their news off the internet, and I suppose you could still do this if you cared to off the internet as well, but along with the thoughts are emotions. And I've been for a while playing around with a version, a derivative of meditation, in which you do the same thing you do with thoughts with emotions. And it's also very hard to do at first, and something you can get better. So what happens is, you look at these stories and you read these stories, and inevitably most of the stories, at least on the front page, are about people dying, being horribly tortured, mistreated, about corruption, etc. And you have emotions that go along with that. And so just like medication, I need mine now, just like meditation with thoughts, you let the emotions go. Now I suppose with meditation, I guess it doesn't really focus on emotions, but I never thought about this before, and I'm kind of kind of leave that as a hanging question mark. But when you're reading the paper, you try to let those emotions go. And what happens is that, for me at least, it creates a different world in my consciousness. A world that I perceive is black and white. Now, when I mean black and white, I don't mean binary. I don't mean more minimalistic. I think of color as emotion. So I'm letting the color go, and I'm experiencing these stories, these events, without the color, to the extent that I'm able. It's a process very similar. It's letting go, not holding on, not grasping. And it's a different world. Now, I suppose it's hard to explain because it's a state of consciousness, and state of consciousnesses cannot really be fully explained. They have to be experienced. But it led me to some interesting places. And I suppose these types of things are fairly obvious, but when you experience them, they're different, as are all things. So, I discovered a world which, I guess if you're in this world, you experience a lot of feelings and things connected to feelings with it. And then you kind of remove yourself from that world by saying, well, that's just the way it is. And then when you enter that world of black and white, you can't say that's just the way it is, because when you say just, your reference point is from the perspective of color. When you enter the world of black and white, everything is. Now, you can't treat these words as just pure philosophical statements. They're statements that refer to a state of consciousness that I'm trying to express, that I experience when I move from the world of color into that world of black and white. And, of course, when I return and describe it, the part I guess is obvious is the color doesn't exist in the world. The world is black and white. We insert the color. And then someone could say, well, don't we insert everything? The world is essentially created, modified, interacted with through our consciousness and what we believe to be external reality. Yeah, but no. It feels meaningful, and I think it is meaningful, but I can't, or I'm not willing to, or not able to at this moment, tell you why I think it's meaningful. Let me just say this. I can say it's meaningful because I feel that the state of consciousness is meaningful, and I don't mean just when I'm there. I mean when I return. So that notion, that experience of washing away the color and seeing everything is, without that operation, that emotional part, and perhaps we can do that because our brains are somewhat separated. They interconnect to a great degree, the intellectual, which came later in brain development, than the emotional. And of course, Antonio Damasio talks a lot about that in his books. Anyway, I wanted to share with you this. I hope it's meaningful to you. Take care.